I'd just like to ask, following the question about insurance costs. I mean, we did hear in the first, or rather in the last session, which preceded this one, that some insurance companies are refunding money and some aren't to Crèches, which were not open for the past 3 months. I mean, for a crèche which isn't open, there's absolutely no insurable interest whatsoever. Given that all of these monies come from parents and also from the state exchequer, ultimately, in many instances, is that something that the department will take up with insurance companies? I mean, I am aware that the Minister for Finance met with insurance companies about car insurance a lot earlier.
I think we expect Deputy to be working very closely with other departments in relation to insurance issues over the next number of weeks and months, and certainly that's an issue that we can raise. But as I understand it, a number of insurers have extended their term for 3 months, so that your next insurance bill doesn't fall due for a further 3 months. If there are any instances where insurers are not doing a refund, then obviously that's an issue of concern that we would certainly be raising in the context of the work that we will be doing on insurance generally.
I greatly welcome that, given that we heard from our previous witnesses that there are instances where some insurance companies are not giving a refund or not extending. But the next question pertains to the administrative burden. There's a huge administrative burden on small crèches. Some people are, many of whom have started out as almost in somebody's home as a self-employed, in self-employment, and we heard from a previous witness that she used to spend hours at night up until midnight filling out forms and stuff. It seems to me that it's a little bit like the GPs, where the state wants to have a universal service, but that they want to load all of the administration and all of the insurance and all of the risk and all of the cost onto individuals, and then sort of expect to get a universal service in return. Is there anything, or does anybody ever think about lessening the administrative burden rather than increasing it on childcare providers? I mean, I appreciate there's a tendency for civil servants to just say, actually, we'll create another form for people to fill in, without ever thinking that this is something, unlike civil servants, that ordinary people have to do it. They can't just walk away from it and not do it, that it's not a 9-to-5 job, and that it means people sometimes staying up until midnight trying to fill in forms. And the same is true of GPs, but I've maybe more sympathy for childcare providers because they're less well remunerated typically than GPs.
Thank you, Deputy. Genuinely, I would say that is, we accept that is a huge problem for the sector, and genuinely we don't set out to have them spend all their time on paperwork. But there's 2 reasons for a lot of the administration. One is around regulation and regulatory requirements, and that is coming from the perspective of child safety, child protection. There's a certain amount that they need to do. We've seen poor regulation in this country and the impact on children and families. So it is right that there is a strong regulatory regime, but I note the draft programme for government and the last programme for government looked to us to streamline various inspectorates, etc., and we will work on that. The second piece of administration is associated with those services that are getting government funding. So if they aren't running any government schemes, there isn't that much paperwork. If they're running our schemes, because they are in receipt of exchequer funding, there's a certain amount of rules, etc., attaching to that. We are trying to lessen the burden. For example, the National Childcare Scheme is more an IT-based system, and the burden for providers will be lower with that than it was for the old CCS and tech schemes. So that's one tangible example of what we're doing to try and reduce the workload on them. Also, we have given extra funding, so we've given the programme support payments to recognise that there is a lot of administrative demands on them. And I'd also say that the system that we used in the past called PIP is going to be replaced over time to a more user-friendly early years platform Hive system that will be easier for providers to operate.
Thanks very much. I greatly welcome that. With regard to the fact that it's computer-based, I mean, I have had complaints from childcare providers that, they've spent hours in areas where there's relatively poor broadband connection, that they simply can't download these forms and can't interact with it. I suppose it's something that I just urge you to take into consideration moving forward, that not every place in the country has the same quality of access to the internet as a government department in Dublin.